Um, I want to start today with a question that is honestly a little uncomfortable.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, I want you to look at your life right now, your job, your relationship, your daily habits,
Mm-hmm.
and ask yourself, if you had to start over today, knowing everything you know right now, would you actually choose any of this again?
Oof. That's the zero-based thinking question.
Yeah,
And it's dangerous because if the answer is no, you suddenly realize you have a massive problem on your hands. You're maintaining a life you wouldn't actually choose to buy if you were shopping for it today.
exactly. And that is really the central theme of today's deep dive. We are talking about turning points.
Right.
But we aren't just talking about like luck or fate or waiting for lightning to strike. We're looking at the specific mechanics of how to pivot when you realize you're on the wrong path.
And our source material for this is really unique today. We're doing a deep dive into a roundtable interview with Brian Tracy.
Arguably one of the titans of the productivity world.
Yeah, absolutely. But the interviewers here are his wife, Barbara, and his three adult children, Michael, Christina, and Catherine.
Which changes the dynamic entirely.
Completely.
I mean, this isn't Brian Tracy, the guru on stage selling a seminar to 5,000 people. This is Brian Tracy, the dad, sitting at a table, dealing with past failures, explaining how he raised his kids, and kind of figuring things out in real time.
Right. And the mission for us today is to extract the actual frameworks he used. We're going to look at his golden triangle of success.
Which is fascinating.
It is, and we'll get into a surprisingly biological reason why you might be feeling anxious, which actually has nothing to do with your mindset.
Right, the genetic component.
Exactly. And then we'll dive deeper into that zero-based thinking concept you mentioned, which is honestly a brutal tool for self-assessment.
It really is. But before we get to the systems, we have to establish the context. Because Brian Tracy didn't start out as a success expert.
No, not at all.
He started out as a broke guy sleeping in a bush.
Literally in a bush.
Yeah.
This is the Africa story, and it's basically the foundational myth of his career. Young Brian and two friends decide to cross Africa, not because they had a plan, but essentially because they were bored and nobody else was doing it.
They start on bicycles
Yeah.
from London, heading toward Johannesburg.
Which is insane.
I looked at a map, and that is roughly a suicide mission on a bike.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about thousands of miles of unpaved, hostile terrain.
It basically was a suicide mission. They rode across France and Spain, and Brian specifically mentions the physical toll. He said it felt like all the hills were uphill and all the wind was in our faces. By the time they hit Gibraltar, they were totally wrecked. They were out of money, sleeping in the grass on the side of the road. They had a binary choice.
And this is the first major turning point we see. The logical choice here is to go home.
Right.
You tried, you failed, you go back to England and get a normal job. Most people would have quit right there and just had a fun story for the pub.
But they chose the illogical path. They decided to persist. But, and this is the key insight, they didn't just wish for it. They didn't just pedal harder.
Right, the bugs were the problem.
Exactly. They realized the vehicle was wrong. The bicycles wouldn't work for the Sahara Desert, so they pivoted their method. They wrote letters to everyone they knew, essentially crowdfunding before crowdfunding existed.
It sounds a bit desperate.
Yeah.
Just begging for cash from Gibraltar.
Oh, it was extremely desperate. But it worked. A relative sent them $300, which back then was enough to buy a beat-up Land Rover.
Wow.
And that shift from we must bike to we must get there, the vehicle doesn't matter, is what Tracy calls the distinction between the goal and the method.
So the takeaway isn't just never give up. It's never give up on the destination, but be entirely willing to completely change the vehicle you use to get there.
Precisely. Persistence isn't about banging your head against a brick wall. It's about finding a door. And that theme actually carries over to his daughter, Christina. Her story in this interview is about the value of quitting, which feels contradictory to the Africa story at first glance, but is actually the exact same principle.
Right, because Christina was the academic star.
She was. She was a double major, pre-med in psychology. She had announced to the world at age 9 that she was going to be a pediatrician.
That's a heavy identity to carry for a decade.
Yeah, she built her whole life around this promise she made as a child.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. You make a declaration when you're young, I'm going to be a lawyer or I'm going to be a musician, and then you feel hostage to it as an adult because you don't want to look like a flake.
Exactly. And she was miserable. She realized the competitive, high-stress lifestyle of a doctor really didn't match the life she wanted as a mother and a wife. She was stuck in a sunk cost trap.
Yeah.
And Brian's advice to her was so simple. He said, Christina, it's okay to change your mind.
It sounds so simple, But why is that so incredibly hard for us to accept?
Because we view changing our mind as a loss of integrity. We think, I said I would do this, so I must do it. Tracy frames it totally differently. You made that decision with the information you had then. You have new information now.
Right.
Sticking to the old decision isn't integrity, it's stubbornness. It's driving the bicycle into the Sahara when you know it won't make it.
So she dropped pre-med, focused entirely on psychology, and actually thrived.
Correct. She aligned her method with her actual goal, which was a balanced life. Now contrast that with his son, Michael.
Okay.
Michael wanted the easy win. He wanted a high-status banking job right out of college, but couldn't get hired anywhere. He was just drifting.
And Brian didn't tell him to quit.
No. Brian's advice to Michael was the exact opposite. He told him to go do the hard thing, get a job in direct sales, belly to belly, face to face.
The job literally nobody wants.
The job nobody wants because it invites constant rejection. But Michael did it. He learned how to sell. And ironically, years later, the company he worked for was acquired by a bank. Yeah, and he entered the banking world as a VP. He leapfrogged the people who tried to take the straight line because he had these gritty foundational skills.
Brian drops a statistic here about the line of least resistance that I found really interesting.
Yes, he argues that 80% of people look for the easy way, the shortcuts, the hacks. Only the top 20% are willing to do the uncomfortable, necessary work.
And that's why the top 20% control the vast majority of the wealth.
Exactly. Michael's story validates that. Doing the grunt work of sales gave him a skill set his peers just didn't have.
Okay, so we have persistence in Africa, strategic quitting with Christina, and doing the hard work with Michael. But Tracy is a systems guy. He breaks this down into what he calls the golden triangle of success.
This is essentially the operating system for the entire deep dive. 3 pillars. Pillar 1 is accepting responsibility.
This is the I am responsible mantra.
Yeah.
But let's be real for a second. Is this just positive self-talk? Or is there a literal mechanism at play here?
There's a mechanism. It's cognitive displacement. Tracy explains that the human mind physically cannot hold 2 conflicting thoughts at once. You cannot blame someone else and accept responsibility simultaneously. It's a binary switch.
So it's like a circuit breaker for negativity.
Exactly. If you're angry at traffic, or your boss, or the economy, you are in victim mode. The moment you say, I am responsible, you force your brain to switch tracks. You move from, who did this to me?
Yeah.
To what am I going to do about it?
Why?
It kills the negative emotion instantly because you just can't be a victim and a driver at the same time.
I really like that. It's super practical. Okay, what about pillar 2?
Written goals. But the nuance here is the frequency. Brian writes his top 10 goals every single morning.
Every morning. I feel like most people do this maybe once a year on New Year's Eve, usually while hungover.
Yeah, and that's exactly why most people don't hit them. Tracy's point is that the world is noisy. Entropy is constant. If you don't remind yourself of your destination every 24 hours, you drift.
It's like the Africa trip.
Right. You need to check the compass daily, or you end up in the wrong country entirely. Writing them down mechanically imprints them on your subconscious.
And pillar 3.
Continuous learning. He calls it stepping on the accelerator.
He mentions the brain's capacity here. I think he said something about vocabulary.
Right. A 6-year-old knows about 5,000 words. An educated adult might know 100,000. That massive gap proves the brain is plastic. It's a sponge.
Yeah.
Tracy's argument is that if you feel stuck, it's often because you've simply stopped feeding the engine.
And he links this to dopamine, right? It's not just about being smart. It's about actually feeling good.
Yes. Novelty. Learning something new, like a language or a skill, triggers dopamine. It keeps you engaged. A lot of people think they're burned out and need a vacation, but they are actually just bored.
They need the novelty of learning to wake their brain up.
Exactly.
I want to pivot to the spiritual side of the interview, which honestly surprised me. You don't usually hear business titans talking about divine order. It feels a bit woo-woo for a productivity deep dive.
It does, but this is heavily influenced by his wife, Barbara. They reveal that for decades, they spent 1 to 2 hours a day reading spiritual texts.
That is a massive time investment. That's more than most people spend working out.
It is. But for Barbara, it was a practical tool for resilience. She uses the mantra, I affirm divine order in all things.
How does she apply that practically? Say, when things are going totally wrong.
That's exactly when she uses it. When a project fails or bad news hits, instead of panicking, she affirms divine order. It's a form of radical acceptance.
Right.
It quiets the panic response so the superconscious or just your intuition can find a solution. It's basically saying, This is happening for a reason. Let me find the reason rather than why is this happening to me?
It connects right back to the responsibility pillar, doesn't it? If you aren't fighting reality, you can actually deal with it.
Exactly. And this leads directly to their discussion on forgiveness. Tracy quotes a book, Sermon on the Mount by Emmett Fox. The core idea is never become upset about something you cannot change.
Which is incredibly logical, but so hard to do. If someone wrongs you, you want to stay mad. It feels like justice.
It feels like justice, but Tracy argues it's actually self-sabotage. He tells a story about getting fired from a massive job. He was the COO of a $265 million company, sacked without warning.
That has to be an enormous ego blow.
Huge. He was devastated. He was walking around with this heavy story of betrayal. He went to lunch with a friend, ready to unload, to tell the sad story of how he was wronged.
And what happened?
The friend just wasn't interested. The friend basically nodded and changed the subject.
That sounds so cold. Like, sorry you got fired, pass the salt.
It was the best thing that could have happened. Brian realized nobody cares.
Wait, explain why that's a good thing. Because that sounds super depressing.
It sounds cynical, but it's actually incredibly liberating. If nobody cares, then you are completely free from the fear of judgment. You don't have to perform for an audience because the audience is busy worrying about themselves. It freed him to move on, start his own thing, and eventually, the exact same guy who fired him hired him back as a consultant for triple the pay.
It's the authenticity piece. If you stop trying to manage everyone's perception of you, you save a lot of energy.
And you attract the right people. The people who like the real you stay. The ones who don't, leave. It's a self-cleaning mechanism for your social circle.
Okay, we've done the mind and the spirit. Now we have to talk about the body. Because there is a segment in this interview where his daughter Catherine brings up something totally different. Biology.
This is crucial. Sometimes a turning point isn't a decision or a prayer. It's a vitamin.
She talks about the MTHFR gene. Now, I'm not a geneticist, so break this down for me like I'm 5. What is this and why does it matter?
Sure. Think of your body like a factory. You eat food, and your body has to process that raw material into fuel, specifically B vitamins and folate, to run your brain. The MTHFR gene is like the machine that does that processing.
Okay, so it's the converter.
Right. But for about 40% of the population, mostly women, that machine is faulty. It's a genetic mutation. The factory can't process the folate properly. This messes up a process called methylation.
And if your methylation is broken, what does that actually feel like?
It feels like anxiety. It feels like depression. It feels like weird gut issues. Catherine points out that you might be going to therapy for anxiety, trying to think your way out of it.
When the root cause isn't even psychological.
Exactly. It's physiological. Your body literally doesn't have the chemical building blocks to keep you calm.
That's a scary thought.
Ah.
That we might be moralizing a chemical deficiency. We tell ourselves, I'm just a nervous person or I'm weak, when really we just need a different supplement.
That's the physiological turning point. Once she addressed the nutrient deficiency with specific supplements, methylated folate and glutathione, the anxiety vanished.
Wow.
It reinforces the responsibility pillar. You have to take ownership of your health, not just your career. You have to debug your own hardware.
I want to close with the framework Brian used in his high-ticket coaching. He claims this system allowed people to double their income and double their time off in 1 year.
And he says he never had to give a refund. It's the more or less start-stop framework. It's a very simple 4-part audit of your life.
Let's run through it quickly. First, do more.
What is already working? If cold calling is bringing in money, do more of it. If date night is making your marriage better, do more of it. Don't reinvent the wheel, just press the gas on what already works.
Second, do less.
What is low value? For a salesperson, sitting in the office is low value. There are no customers in the office. You need to ruthlessly minimize the time you spend on things that don't move the needle.
Third, start.
What are you lacking? What skill or habit do you need to begin today to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be? This goes right back to that continuous learning pillar.
And fourth, the big one. The one that brings us back to the start of the show. Stop.
This is where we return to zero-based thinking. You look at every single activity in your life and ask, knowing what I know now, if I were not already doing this, would I start it?
Give me an example of how that plays out in real life.
Let's say you have an employee who is struggling. Ask yourself, if he walked in to apply for the job today, knowing his past performance, would I hire him? If the answer is no, you have to let him go.
Or a relationship.
Exactly. If I met this person today, knowing everything I know about them, would I start dating them? If the answer is no, you have to get out.
That applies to bad investments, bad habits, even volunteering commitments.
Everything. It filters out the sunk cost fallacy. It forces you to evaluate your life based on current reality, not past hope. It is the ultimate tool for agency because it just clears the deck.
It's really the unifying theme of this whole deep dive, isn't it?
It is. Whether it's biking across Africa, quitting pre-med, taking a methylated vitamin, or firing a bad client, it's all about agency. Active decision-making.
Brian Tracy isn't telling us to work harder. He's telling us to choose better.
Exactly. A turning point isn't something that happens to you. It's something you create. You create it by stopping, looking at the data, and having the guts to make a brand new choice.
So here is your challenge for the week. We want you to apply zero-based thinking, but not just to a bad habit. I want you to look at something you consider a strength, a core part of your current identity or career path.
Oh, that's a great twist.
Look at that core thing
Mm-hmm.
and ask yourself, if I wasn't already doing this, would I choose to start it today? Is it actually serving where I want to go, or is it just comfortable because I'm good at it?
That is a deeply uncomfortable question.
It is.
Mhm.
And if the answer is no, are you brave enough to stop doing it?
Yeah.
Because that is where the real change happens.
Absolutely.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.